There's something broken in people who grew up in the 1970s. Not broken like damaged. Broken like opened. Like they know something the rest of us don't. And it's written all over them if you know how to look. They're the ones who never ask for help. Who can't sit still. Who say I'm fine when they're clearly not. Who love their kids obsessively but can't stop hovering, who are wildly successful but deeply, mysteriously lonely, and they have no idea why they are this way. Because what they remember as freedom, psychologists are now calling the largest case of benign neglect in modern American history, and the effects are just now showing up. Let me describe a feeling you might recognize. You're standing in your kitchen. Everything in your life is objectively fine. Good job, healthy family, stable home. But there's this heaviness, this sense that something's missing, that you're doing everything right but feeling everything wrong. You've felt this your whole life. This low-grade loneliness that makes no sense because you're surrounded by people. This inability to relax that makes no sense because you're safe. This constant nagging feeling that you're on your own even when you're not. If you grew up in the 1970s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And until recently, there was no name for it. The 1970s weren't about freedom. They were about absence. Your parents weren't giving you independence as a gift. They were absent because both of them had to work, or were checked out, or overwhelmed, or dealing with their own shit. The freedom was actually just nobody watching. You spent hours alone, days alone, summers alone. And somewhere in your child brain, you translated nobody's watching into nobody cares. But you couldn't think that, because thinking that would destroy you. So instead, you thought, I must be really trusted. I must be really capable. I must be really independent. You turned abandonment into achievement. And that translation, that psychological sleight of hand you did to survive, it's still running 50 years later. You're still proving you don't need anyone, still showing how capable you are, still earning a love that was supposed to be free. Your brain was developing during those hours alone, and it was learning something crucial about how the world works. It learned, when I'm alone, I'm safe. When I need someone, they're not there. So the safest thing is to need no one. That's not a thought. It's deeper than thought. It's a neural pathway, a baseline assumption your nervous system made about reality. And you can't just think your way out of it, because you didn't think your way into it. You felt your way into it, in thousands of small moments of needing and no one coming, of hurting and no one noticing, of being scared and having to self-soothe, of celebrating something and having no one to tell. You know what you lost? The ability to rest in someone else's care. The ability to be helpless without panic. The ability to need without shame. Most people learn this as babies. They cry, someone comes. They're hungry, they're fed. They're scared, they're comforted. They learn the world responds to my needs. You learn the opposite. You learned my needs are my problem. Figure it out or suffer. That made you incredibly resilient. It also made you incredibly alone. And here's the thing that's fucking you up right now. You don't know how to accept love because you never learned to need it. And everyone around you thinks you're just strong and independent. But you know the truth, you're not strong, you're just really, really good at being alone. You have to be good at everything, not because you want to be, because you have to be. If you're not competent, if you can't figure it out, if you need help, something bad happens inside you. Panic, shame, this terrible feeling that you're failing at being human, so you just handle it. Whatever it is, you handle it. People think this is a good thing. You're so capable, so independent, so strong, but you know it's not strength. It's terror of what happens if you're not capable, terror of needing someone and them not coming, terror of being that kid again, alone, with no one to call. You want closeness desperately, but you can't tolerate it. When someone gets too close, you pull away, not consciously. It just happens. You get busy, you get distant, you create problems, you sabotage things, because closeness means vulnerability, and vulnerability means needing, and needing is the most dangerous thing in the world. Your nervous system learned this when you were 7 years old, and it still believes it at 57. This is what emotional neglect looks like in adults. People who can save everyone else but can't ask for a glass of water. People who can handle a crisis but fall apart when someone's kind to them. People who are fluent in everyone's feelings except their own. There's rage buried in you. You might not feel it, but it's there. Rage at being left alone. Rage at having to raise yourself. Rage at never being asked how you were. Rage at parents who were physically there but emotionally gone. Rage at having to be okay when you weren't. But you can't access that rage. Because if you do, you'd have to admit something unbearable. You were hurt. You were neglected. You needed more than you got. And admitting that feels like weakness, feels like being ungrateful, feels like failing. So the rage stays underground and shows up as depression, anxiety, perfectionism, workaholism, inability to rest, chronic tension in your body that you've had so long you think is just how bodies feel. Someone asks you, how do you feel? And you blank. Fine, good, tired. Those aren't feelings. Those are deflections. You genuinely don't know how you feel most of the time because nobody ever taught you. Nobody ever asked. Feelings were something to get over, not something to understand. So you live in your head, thinking, analyzing, solving, managing. But your body and your heart are foreign territory. And this is the cruelest part. You're surrounded by people who love you. But you feel alone because you don't know how to let love in. You don't know how to need it. You don't know how to believe it's really there. You did develop real strengths. This isn't just trauma. There's genuine capability here. You can read a room better than most therapists. You notice what others miss. You see through bullshit instantly. You can assess danger, read social dynamics, and navigate complex situations with an ease that baffles people. That hypervigilance that exhausts you also makes you brilliant at understanding people. You had to create your own world. Nobody was creating it for you. So you got really good at imagination, at making something from nothing, at entertaining yourself, at finding meaning in emptiness. This is why so many 70s kids became artists, writers, creators, entrepreneurs. They learned to build worlds when reality was insufficient. You can survive things that would break other people because you already have. Lost your job? You'll figure it out. Relationship ends? You'll be fine. Crisis hits. You handle it. This isn't delusion. You really are that resilient. The problem isn't that you can't survive alone. The problem is that you're still surviving when you could be living. Because the skills that helped you survive childhood become the walls that trap you in adulthood. Your greatest strengths are your deepest prisons. You are in your 50s or 60s now, and something's cracking. The competence that carried you this far isn't working anymore. Your body's aging. You need help, and you'd rather die than ask for it. The independence that felt like freedom is starting to feel like isolation. The walls that kept you safe are now keeping everyone out. And for the first time in your life, you're realizing you don't know how to need people, and you need to learn. Fast. The thought of being dependent makes your skin crawl. The thought of needing someone fills you with dread. Because needing feels like dying. Feels like going back to being that kid who needed and no one came. You gave your kids everything you didn't have. Attention, presence, emotional validation, safety, and somehow you created kids who can't handle discomfort, who fall apart at obstacles, who need constant reassurance. You went so far in the opposite direction that you created the opposite problem. You survived being too free. Your kids are suffering from being too protected, and you're all missing the same thing: the ability to be both connected and capable, to need people and be strong, to be vulnerable and be safe. The work isn't about becoming weaker, it's about becoming softer. It's about learning that needing someone doesn't erase your strength, that asking for help doesn't make you helpless, that being vulnerable doesn't mean you're broken. It's about rewiring the belief that you're safe when you're alone into a new truth, that you're safe when you're connected. The freedom you had as a kid wasn't real freedom. It was absence dressed up as independence. Real freedom is being able to need people without losing yourself. Being able to rest in someone else's care without panic. The children of the 1970s grew up too free and too alone. And they've spent their whole lives trying to figure out which one was the problem. The answer is both, and neither. The problem was never the freedom. It was the loneliness. The problem was never the independence. It was the abandonment. You weren't given freedom. you were given absence, and you had to turn it into strength or die. But you're not that kid anymore. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to be okay when you're not. You don't have to earn love by being competent. The armor you built kept you alive, but it's too heavy to carry anymore. Maybe it's time to put it down. Not because you're weak, but because you're finally safe enough to be human.